listening to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network, the nonprofit organization that strives to address the staggering disparity in resource availability for individuals suffering from mental health disorders, processing disorders, addictions, trauma healing, and sexual identity challenges. Together, we strive to end the stigma associated with these challenges so that true healing can begin. Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. My name is Ann, and I welcome you to episode number 94. Now, I've kind of had a little bit of a break over the summer, been dealing with my own health challenges with thyroid issues. They are no fun. Getting old is fun, but challenging. But I am super excited to be back with this episode today. So, I'll tell you about the guest. The guest is Dr. Luoluo Hong, the inaugural Vice President for Student Engagement and Wellbeing at the Georgia Institute of Technology. That is Georgia Tech. If you don't know, I am super passionate about Georgia Tech. Okay, I bleed Georgia Tech, so I'm very excited about this interview. All right, let's talk about Dr. Hong. Dr. Hong has 30 years of experience in higher education, in student development, program delivery, and administrative leadership. Her management style, I'm going to be clear, I copied this from LinkedIn because it was so amazing. So her management style is characterized by a high level of collegial collaboration, inclusive decision-making, transparent conversation, transparent communication, and calculated risk-taking to enhance impact and outcomes. Her governing values are integrity, courage, community, social justice, empowerment, and authenticity, plus a good sense of humor. So, you are going to love this episode. I think it's very important for college students, upcoming college students, those who are hiring individuals out of college, and parents. Check this out as you're thinking about how you want to prepare your students to enter into college and think about that journey. So, what do we think about next? Okay, we have 3 rules of engagement. And what are they? Well, 1, that is commit. Commit to staying for the full episode. There are so many different points of wisdom. Luoluo talks about all the stats about the reality of mental well-being, about colleges, about students in the college setting and at Georgia Tech. And second, she walks through some of the initiatives. She talks through some of the challenges. And then, well, of course, we talk about her favorite motivational quote and share some of mine. Okay. The second one is click. Please click that like, love, share, comment. Also click the button, go to our website. If you recall, one of the big parts of Recovery Advocate Network is that we work to support those individuals who really need treatment. So if you click on the website and you want to support RAN, then click on that donate button. Every single individual who participates with RAN is a volunteer. That includes Dr. Hong. She volunteered her time today. Everyone is a volunteer. So if you will click on that and make a donation, it makes a huge impact. Okay, and what is the final C? Well, of course, it is your coffee or your Coke or your Coke Zero or your tea. It doesn't start with a C. But anyways, it is your conversation. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Listeners, I am super excited for this moment for a number of reasons. First off, I am going to call out that I'm just going to go ahead and say Dr. Hong, but I'm going to say that I have Luoluo with me. And I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons that I'm super excited. One, I have her not in her university professional setting. I have her relaxed and comfortable in her home office setting. My daughter would be so jealous of your pink chair. I want to call you out. Like if she watches this episode, she's going to want to come to your house when she comes to visit and steal that chair. So if it ever disappears, yeah. Okay. So the second reason I was sharing with Luoluo before we hit record that I have really been stalking her before she was ever at Georgia Tech. So the next thing is, of course, the listeners know I'm obsessed with Georgia Tech. I'm an alum. I'm on many boards there. I bleed Georgia Tech. But more importantly, I am, of course, obsessed with mental wellness. And as part of that, on the College of Engineering board many, many years ago, Steve McLaughlin, who used to be the Dean of Engineering, he's now the provost. But when we had one event on campus that really highlighted mental wellness and mental health challenges on campus, there is this perspective in the community that Georgia Tech had a higher incidence of mental health challenges than other schools did. And what I find, and which is much of my, and this is a longer intro, I know you guys are baiting to hear because you're like, I'm sick of hearing Ange talk, but I really have to give this prologue. Okay, so what I often find is that there is this lack of education and this feeling as if things are one way, when the reality is, so the community was like, oh, Georgia Tech has this huge problem, and maybe I don't want to send my students to Georgia Tech because their mental health is just going to go to pot because of this school that's so difficult. And on the College of Engineering board, we had so many conversations about how do we maintain the difficulty level of Georgia Tech, because we are going to continue to produce the best engineers in the world, and how do we ensure that these individuals are healthy individuals that we're taking out into the world to be healthy leaders, members of community, and those things, right? And so a lot of research was done, which, listeners, you can pull up the stats, and I will tell you the facts that Georgia Tech's mental numbers are no worse than other comparable schools. And so we had this conversation, but the thing that I loved about the core team is we said, hey, it's not okay to just say, don't worry, we're not worse than others. Instead, Georgia Tech said, well, what we want to do, though, is we want to pave a path and we want to create something, or we want to create a mission to where we help these students become the best human beings they can possibly be. And so they put the steps forward towards having improved programs and things for the students, which led the path towards Luoluo's role and her coming. And I remember when I heard about her being hired, I was so excited. She had no idea who I was, listeners. I mean, I was just a lowly person. She didn't know that I was super stoked about her. And I heard her talk at several board meetings, and I cornered her and said, you have to be on the podcast. So as I've said these things, I do want to remind you guys, listeners, she is from Georgia Tech. She's going to tell you about her role, what she does. I will remind you, she does not speak for Georgia Tech. Today is Coffee and Conversation. We are having coffee and conversation about these important issues. So she's not speaking on behalf of Georgia Tech. I will do you that reminder as well. But now it is the classic time for me to completely shut up. And Luoluo, why don't you kick us off and tell us about yourself?
Ange, thank you. I'm so excited. I know we booked this like several months ago, and I saw this come up on my calendar, so I'm really excited. And glad we have this chance. So appreciate you bringing me on. I guess you sort of set the stage. So I'll maybe introduce a little bit about the role that I got brought into do. So I've worked my entire life in higher education. My background is in public health. So I actually started my career working in a university setting in health education, health promotion. And then I broadened my field of practice and started working across all the areas that's relevant to students. So housing and threats like admissions and financial aid, counseling, student conduct, student engagement, student activity. So the whole gamut, all the things that pretty much support student experience outside of instruction set. I came to Georgia Tech, as you said, because this new position got created at a time where the institution really wanted to commit to students' well-being and to also make sure that students were connected and brought into the campus life, and that there was a vision for what a Georgia Tech, what a Yellow Jacket, right? When they graduate, what should be their experience at and connection with university. So I was intrigued by the role because it was this chance to sort of bring together my experience in public health with my background as an educator, working with student affairs and student services. And it was such an intriguing challenge because when I got recruited, that was the story, that Georgia Tech is one of the worst challenges around mental health and that our students are struggling more than other campuses. And so we have these concerns and what. So I interviewed, came and visited a region, this Georgia Tech, right? And gorgeous campus in the middle of Atlanta and just amazing campus, amazing students. I fell in love with the students when I heard. So I think what's been interesting is I will say that I believe it's so important when we start trying to impact community to other students. So that first year, I wanted to understand there are all these stories and narratives about Georgia Tech. How much of it was true? How much of that really resonated? How much of that was pockets of individuals experiencing certain things? How much that was a common perception or experience of individuals? And so I think a couple of things really came out for us, and it shaped what we've been doing in the last 2 years. Since you guys just said that, I just did my 3-year anniversary on office, but it's kind of neat that we're doing this interview now. I can be reflective. So one of the first aspects is just understanding what is the actual state of students at Georgia Tech. We actually have a lot of data, as you mentioned. And so we have data from the University of Michigan Study Public Health. American College Health Association has a longstanding national college health assessment. And that is data we get collected over multiple years. And what I realized is, I don't know that we had looked at it, right? And so when I looked at the data, that's where you start to see the data has the advantage that you can compare Georgia Tech students' responses with what their national peers are also reporting. And that's where we really validated that concept that our students are addressing and dealing with some of the mental health, stress-related anxiety challenges that students all across the United States are experiencing. What was also clear is that it wasn't more per se than it was in the child care institutions. And in a couple of cases, there was some helpful data where our students' health and wellness actually was better than that. And I thought that's an important story to tell. In my field, we have something that's called social norms perception. And it's research that looks at how if you think that your peers behave a certain way or believe a certain way, that's more likely to shape your own beliefs and your own behaviors. And there's actually research on this, for example, with alcohol, that if you think, quote unquote, everyone is drinking at your campus, then chances are the drinking consumption rates go up on that campus. When you do an education and you help students recalibrate and show them what is that actual alcohol consumption rate on their campus, and if in fact it's lower than what they perceive, that has an interesting effect of the trickle down. So social norms perception is a really powerful motivator of student choices here. So year one was just disrupting that, getting the story out to say, we are like the rest of the country. We're not worse. We have our own challenges. And what is unique about Georgia Tech? The second thing that is students are talking about mental health and they're saying, yes, it's good. We know where to go. Like we did a lot of education. The staff that had been here before I got have really worked hard to get resources available to augment capacity where needed and to communicate with students if you're in crisis, go, etc. My first year I spent listening. Students told me a couple of things. One is that it's great to know that Georgia Tech cares about making sure that our mental health is addressed. Oftentimes, though, we feel that while it's great to talk to us about where we go access, we also want to know more about it. The other thing they also talked about is, while we also feel that the university cares about us, it doesn't feel like everywhere that we go that that's necessary. So, for example, we're saying you want us to take care of ourselves, but then this level of academic rigor and academic expectations, those are challenging. And so how do I mesh those things together? And you mentioned that already, like how do we take care of students without reducing that sense of academic excellence at Georgia Tech is really important, right? That academic.
Which FYI, the alums don't want to reduce the rigor because we want to maintain.
Here's the thing, no, I've heard that over and over. My first year when I met with alums, they're like, it's great what you're doing. We're excited that you're here. Just so you know, we don't want to do it in a way so that it softens the degree, right? The degree really comes out of the Georgia Tech degree. It means something to the Yellow Jacket. And the irony, Ange, is that you don't have to. It's a both and, right? Like
absolutely.
It's sort of like when we talk about diversity and excellence, right? I've been in higher education for 30 years. And always people are like, well, if we increase diversity, then does that mean that we retrench from excellence? And all the research says that is a myth, that actually diversity enhances excellence relies on diversity. So it's the same thing so I'll share another thing. The National Survey on Student Engagement. What they have found, when students feel a higher level of engagement with their institution, they feel deeper connections with other students, their faculty, their staff, the campus, then that actually contributes to higher retention rates, which then results in higher graduation. So what's interesting, what the research shows is level of academic challenge. Students who feel a higher level of academic challenge, that's actually correlated with the higher degree of engagement, which is a positive contributor to retention and graduation. So to me, I don't think rigor is bad, right? It's not that rigor in and of itself contributes to poor health outcomes, or that in order to have positive health outcomes, you have to back on rigor. So it really is a both and in this particular case. So that leads us to the third thing is, I think what I heard from students is we want more prevention. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of each other? That's not wait till we're in crisis and to take up systems. The other thing is, at Georgia Tech, our students are experiencing what our U.S. Surgeon General has really identified as a national public health epidemic, and all this on social isolation, right? The amount of time that the typical person who lives in the U.S. spends in community with other individuals has decreased significantly per month in the last 12 months. This started before the people. This is not, we can't blame the pandemic. This has already happened. Technology, lifestyle, social change, cultural values shifting. All of those have really contributed to more and more of us spend more time alone in isolation. And we ask students things like, do you have somebody in your life who you believe most knows you really well? And that number is decreasing over time. Just we're seeing this with Mount Health, so we're seeing this with staff, right? That one,
right? Yeah, for sure.
Right, and so we know that that is a powerful indicator and driver of health and wellness, and that leads to the fourth part that I think is so important. Health is an outcome, right? If we're in good health, there's no one thing that we focus on that results in good health. It has to be, it's the result of a complex interplay of multiple dimensions. We use the 8 dimensions of wellness at Georgia Tech. And the idea is that if you only improve one or address one, but you don't address others. So for example, if you only focus on mental health or emotional wellness, but don't ask questions about, do you have social wellness? Do you have a sense of community? Do you feel a sense of belonging? Do you feel that you can bring your full authentic self? If you don't address that as well. And then physical wellness also, right? If you're not eating and getting appropriate nutrient-rich foods into your diet, if you're not sleeping.
And sleep, right.
Exactly. Sleep is a huge thing, right? Physical exercise, getting up and moving. If that isn't happening. So there are all these different aspects, spiritual wellness, financial wellness. So again, leaning into the whole thing. So that's what we're focused on. It's been so exciting to sort of work on a campus that is entrepreneurial, that is innovative, that is creative, that is really open to new ideas and pushing us to kind of think outside the box. And it's not just mental health. We have to work on mental health, but it's more than that. We have to work on community, connection, and how do we help ensure that students feel like they belong here. One of the challenges that we've been building for this and competitive school is I think a lot of students feel a sense of, I don't belong.
And like,
they're going to find me out.
Right. Imposter syndrome from the very
Right.
beginning. Okay. I have so many thoughts. Let me see if I cannot forget them. Okay. The first thought that I have, I want to start with the belonging part. Okay.
Yes.
And listeners, if you're not aware, I will share that, as I mentioned, well, I'll start with this. For those who don't know, I went back to school at Georgia Tech as a 29-year-old single mom with a special needs daughter, because who doesn't go back to get their engineering degree in biomedical engineering with a child that needs physical, speech, and occupational therapy 3 times a week? I mean, that just seems like a logical thing to do. So I went to Georgia Tech there. I will say I had an amazing experience at Georgia Tech. I needed to, study really hard, get really good grades because I needed to support my child. And I was very involved. So I was president of Biomedical Engineering Society. I was on the student advisory board. I created the leadership awards. I just really dug in, and Georgia Tech changed my life. And so I now have been on the biomedical engineering board. I was chair of the board for a period of time. I've been on the College of Engineering board. I'm now on the President on Hill's board and on the College of Engineering board, and really just am focused on thinking about ways within my community to help build the next generation of learning engineers and engineering leaders. Okay. So I say all of those things because one of the things you said are belonging. And so one thing that Georgia Tech is really focused on, for example, is Georgia Tech really wants to have Georgia Tech is a public university. A lot of people in Georgia actually don't know that. For some reason, they think it's a private university. It's not.
Yeah.
It's public. And secondly, Georgia Tech really wants students from every single county in the state of Georgia. And so some people think, oh, I have to take all these AP classes and I have to do all of that. Guess what? Students who've never taken calculus in high school actually get into Georgia Tech, because you have high schools that calculus isn't even an option in their county. Okay. But getting back to belonging is one of the things we talk about, and it might have even been in one of your presentations, Luoluo. I don't recall, but at one of the recent board meetings I was at, we were talking about how do we think about creating ways for some of the incoming freshmen that have applied, creating ways for their specific personas. I'm not sure that's the appropriate word, but I'm going to say personas, for their specific personas to feel like they belong at Georgia Tech. So how do we stop the idea that Georgia Tech is just a whole bunch of either white male, or I'm just going to throw out stereotypes. Okay. White male or white Indian or white Chinese engineers, right? It's not. It is so much more diverse. How do we make it the path towards those diverse those diverse individuals to create those communities of belonging and set them up for success? So that's one of the things I'm thinking about. And I just want to make sure everyone's aware. And I can say this because I don't work at Georgia Tech. By the way, Luoluo is the vice president for student engagement and well-being. So I didn't say what her credentials were before, but that is the role that she holds. Okay, so belonging, I just want to say from all the different levels, we talk about how to focus on that. The other thing I want to say from a hiring role, in my nonprofit days or ways, I'm COO of a software company, and we look to hire. I will tell you this, as a hiring individual, what am I looking to hire? I, of course, am looking for a level of brilliance, right? I'm looking for people who can produce things. But you know what I'm also looking for, Luoluo? I'm looking for those people who have learned those mental wellness skills, the ones who've learned how to cope with challenges, the ones who've learned those 8 degrees of things, the ones who've learned how to create communities, the ones who've learned how to create belonging areas. I want to hire from a place that has cultivated that mindset, because what that's going to do is all the research shows they can then bring that into the culture of a company. And those are the things that not only will make them successful as an individual, they will make that company successful. That's the next generation I want to hire into my company as well.
Okay. Well, that's hopefully we can be the theater institution for that. So Ange, let me start by just also sharing that, President Rivera's vision for cultivating well-being wasn't just about students. So we right now are celebrating 2 years into our Cultivate Well-being roadmap for students, but we're 1 year into implementing our Cultivate Well-being faculty and staff. So it is reflecting that idea that your entire community has to be taken care of, right? We have to cultivate and promote that health and wellness and well-being goes for everyone, because it's all interdependent. It's all interrelated, right? I joke sometimes. We said, the gel and oxygen pass off before assisting others. I think that's really true for the staff and the faculty who are here, whether they directly or indirectly support our students' learning and success. If they're not well, then it's hard for them to show up, at their best capacity and do all they want, right? Students don't get the full benefit of the full potential of what they can offer. And then by the same token, the research on belonging also shows, and it's actually true for employees and students. Employees and students perform better, they're more productive, they're more likely to take risks and be more effective in their roles, be innovative and creative when they feel a sense of belonging. And so a couple of things that I'll share that we're really trying to focus on. I think my mantra is, we're not just human doodles. At Georgia Tech, we're human beings. And I think sometimes in our rush to celebrate all the things that have done, right, and lean into our human doodleness, I worry that sometimes it comes at the expense of godliness. And our students, when I say that, that really resonates. Right? Right? Sometimes I feel like they just see me as for example, our graduate students, right? They're a significant part of how Georgia Tech produces the new knowledge, right? The research, the teaching, the learning that Georgia Tech, they're a key part of that. And I sometimes hear graduate students say, sometimes I feel like all they see is what I can contribute the labor, right? And I'm not sure always they see this human being.
Yes, what have you done for me lately?
Exactly, right? And that's not unique to Georgia Tech. I think that's just oftentimes we see in a research university with
I think that's unique to life. I think that's unique to life. And unfortunately, it does. But with that said, it does not mean that it's acceptable. It's kind of one of those things that it is a common thing, but we can do better than that.
And we're working on that. We just heard a presentation earlier this week. The School of Graduate Education is really trying to work with Graduate Student Government Association, with our area, student engagement and well-being, with the colleges and schools and departments. How do we did a survey that really asked students, right? What is their experience at Georgia Tech? And now what's great is we're actually taking that data and capturing great experience that is really typifies what we want graduate students to have. So financial stress.
So students, if you're listening to this, I want Lola, she's going to repeat this right now. Students, if you're listening to this, because I know a lot of students, and I know they say, I'm going to fill this survey, but no one ever pays attention to it. And to be clear, I did say that with a straight face and a voice, because I know that's how you guys sound. So I want you to listen to what she says, because these surveys are important. They do pay attention to it. They do sit and bang their heads trying to figure out how to improve different things. So say again what I interrupted you, but I wanted people to hear that.
No, thank you, Ange, for amplifying that. And so, you're absolutely right. We are data-driven, right? Because I do think your point of some of that perception that, why should I take? I'm going to be honest and say sometimes that's probably fair. But I'm going to say that we really are trying to say, if we're going to improve the student experience and promote well-being, we have to look at the data. I mean, we're a science, technology, engineering, math institution, right? So we ought to start with the data. It's not everything, but it's a good start. So we administered this very broad, comprehensive graduate student survey. As the data is coming in, we're really looking at it. And as a result of what students are telling us, it was a surprise. I think you can talk to graduate students. But how do we make childcare more accessible, right?
my gosh.
to alleviate
Exactly.
some of the financial stressors, right? So all relationships with their faculty, advisors, and mentors, career development. These are the things that we're hearing from students. And again, everything fits into one of the dimensions of wellness, right? Career, occupational wellness is an element. How do we align students so that when they graduate or wherever they go and go to be who they're going to be when they grow up, that they find their passion, right? That they're working and serving and leading in a place that gets excited and juiced up, because that's what we know. Part of occupational wellness is to let the chance to contribute in meaningful ways in a field of work or line of endeavor that is aligned with your values and your life goals and the ways you want to serve. So that's some of the things that we're doing. For our first year students, I'm excited to kind of share this. So we're about to begin a new program. So I don't know if our listeners know. Okay.
First off, I want to say growing up is overrated. I never plan on growing up. So
okay, that's what I love about working at a university. Right? I have a good excuse to stay young. So I absolutely agree. Right. And okay.
I mean, right. Because also, Lola, one of the things that I say, and a couple of things, and then I'm so excited to hear about this new program, but a couple of things I want to throw out there is we talked a lot about the engineering side of Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has a phenomenal business program. And one of the things I'm really excited about is I just now joined the VIP program as a mentor for the an interdisciplinary program, bringing together the business team members and the engineering business member. And I love it because when all these people can come together and pull their resources together, it's amazing. So I was going to say that. And another thing I was going to say is, I don't know, I forgot it. So I don't want to grow up. Georgia Tech has some amazing people across the board. And now let's talk about the incoming thing that's about to start on August 19th for the freshmen.
Okay. So no, that's a good setup. And so a lot of people don't realize we have over 95% of our entering first year new student class live on campus. We don't have
on campus.
Yeah, they live on campus in our residence halls. We don't have any requirement. They want to live on. And they apply to live on. And in our priority, we do give new college students, first-time college students, priority in health. So it just ends up that over 95% of all freshman students. And so one of the things I ask when students start saying, well, how do we create a culture? Like it can't just be a Band-Aid over it. I have a mental health crisis and I go to counseling, or I'm ill and I go to Sam's Health Services. How do we make it so it's more in the water, it's in the oxygen, it's in the soil? And
love that. It's in the oxygen in the soil.
Right? It's like building a culture of well-being. And so what we realize is we have this captive audience of 95% of our first year students live on campus, and we weren't fully leveraging. So starting this year, our class of 2028, they're going to be the first participants in the first year wellness experience. And so in this experience, every month will focus on one of the 8 dimensions of wellness. So all the activities, workshops, the social events, the communications for that month will focus on one dimension of wellness. And the focus here is on how do I take care of myself? How do I take care of my friends or my roommates or my partner, right? How do I recognize the signs of stress? What are the stress management strategies that work for me? So maybe for me, taking a long hike outdoors works for me. Maybe for you, it's yoga. For some people, I do stress eating. So maybe I have to change my nutritional habits. So it's getting people to sort of get to that place of self-awareness. When I taught MPH 1040, it's the class that we have that's required for students to graduate in public health class. When we talked about stress, the number of students who said, I didn't realize that when I ground my teeth, that was stress. Right? Or they didn't know how to tune into their body's ways of telling them that they were in distress and needed to breathe and stop and pause. So we need to get that education out there. So I'm so excited because what this means is if we do this, every single new student class will then go through this year-long experience. They'll then have a toolkit that they can ultimately continue to go back to and grow and add to during their whole time at Georgia Tech, and then the next class, and then the next class. And in 4 years, we're going to have to really change this every single.
And so potential people hiring, I will tell you from someone, my specialty is building companies that have phenomenal cultures, excellent customer service. I can tell you, these are the people who know how to utilize these skills. I know what my third thing, you remember back when I had that awkward moment, but I did share it. Listeners, I don't edit out those awkward moments. We just laugh about them. Okay. I remembered what I forgot. The thing that I forgot was what's so valuable. And I'm not just going to preach about Georgia Tech. I will give kudos to Gary May, who's the chancellor of UC Davis. He used to be the dean of engineering at Georgia Tech. He's a dear friend of mine. I interviewed him early in this podcast. I would love for all the listeners and Luoluo for you to listen to it. He talked about some amazing things they're doing for student well-being at UC Davis. But my point in saying that is that there are other universities who are doing some amazing things as well. Yes. So, and now I'll get back to my love of Georgia Tech. Okay. So one of the things that I want to really highlight is that when you have a university that focuses on both things, that focuses on what I want to hire for my generation of leaders is I want the ones who have the rigor. They understand how to crush it. They understand how to work under pressure. They understand, they're brilliant. They understand how to solve problems. I'm a big believer in solving problems. Okay. So when I talk about, for example, I also am very biased about biomedical engineers because I believe we learn how to solve problems. It doesn't matter what the problem is. We learn how to solve problems. Okay. So when you educate an individual on how to do those things that are all intellectually based and also team building based, because you learn how to work with team members from different backgrounds. Okay. That is one skill set. But if you pair that with this emotional intelligence piece that you're building, that is the whole being. And I think that oftentimes as parents, we're looking at, okay, well, we want to make sure we send them to a school that sets them up with this part, or sets them up with this part. And I just want to say to communities and to parents and to individuals, really try and figure out, and to, yourself, really try and figure out a way to set yourself up with both. However you need to supplement your own personal growth, look for both, because we deserve to live our best lives. And I can say for myself personally, my best life has been learning both. And I'm really grateful that I've had the opportunity in multiple companies to serve in the C-suite. And I'm confident enough to walk in and say, hey, my therapist said this last week. And I've had employees come to me and say, I'm so grateful you talk about your therapy appointments, because you normalize it in the office.
You're bringing your whole self.
Exactly.
Whole self to the workplace.
Right. And so I would, if for alumni, and I've had this conversation with alumni, and I'm first off, I'm really grateful for early people who at Georgia Tech who recognize that I could be a healthy voice and have put me in positions on boards at Georgia Tech to advocate for Georgia Tech, because I've had the opportunity to talk to people when we started having these conversations about bringing these things in that were just like, oh, I don't want to be weak to the students and da. And I've had the opportunity to have conversations and say, we're not being weak to the students. Like, we're setting them up to freaking crush it in life. Like, we are talk about the next generation of, every best. You look at the Fortune 500 in the next 15 years, it will be full. Those leaders will be full of these type of individuals. And it will be because of people like Luoluo, who thought of creative things like what you're about to do with these freshmen in a couple of weeks. And I'm so excited. I'm back in Atlanta and I'm super close and I'm going to get to see this.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to, we'll push this out.
I want to be invited to some of these events.
Okay.
Can I invite myself?
Bring the community, right? It takes a village to raise a child. And so I think year one, we're conscious, like year one, we're just getting the basics. We want to get the structures. Does this work? Does it scale at this size? Like it's every single first year student, even the ones that aren't living on campus, we're going to invite them, right? The 3% that didn't, but we're going to invite them too, because we want to reach every single first year student. So this first year, we're going to do it. We'll learn from it. We'll tweak it. And I think the more that we can scale it and bring folks in, because we recognize it really does take everyone's effort. I mean, that's what I've so enjoyed is how many alumni have been so intrigued and engaged in sort of wanting to be a part of this movement. I mean, it's really powerful if you think about it.
What you say, I will tell you this. One of the things I was shocked about, I'm trying to remember. So you've been in your position 3 years. So this was more than 3 years ago that we were talking about this. Gosh, I'm trying to think of how long Steve has been provost, because this was back when Steve was chair of the College of Engineering. And I remember when this first started coming up, as a topic. And one of the things that I was actually really floored by was the men, frankly, if any of you guys on this session of the College of Engineering board hear this and you're offended by what I'm about to say, I'll buy you dinner if you call me out on this. Okay. I'm only doing it if you call me out on this. So, but there were a lot of old white men on the College of Engineering board who I thought would be really offended by the idea that and they were actually, transparently, they were more in favor of it than I was. I was actually more worried about defending the rigor than what they were. And I can actually remember exactly what room we were sitting in when we had this particular meeting, and we were breaking out into breakout rooms to talk about this, when some of them said this. And I just was floored by these executives of huge companies that had this response. And it was just this like moment of realization to me that I was really proud, and B, said, you know what? Now is the time. Okay. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So because we've like talked about some amazing things, we're making major progress and the stats are good and we're starting this new program and everything's great. But the reality is everything is not always great behind the scenes. So what would you say some of your biggest challenges have been?
Oh, it's not at first going to sound like it's related to health and wellness, but I think it is. This last year, as a country, and you saw student communities across the U.S. grapple with the aftermath of Hamas's attack on Israel. And I think what we really saw was, like many other campuses, a test on Luoluo. I want to bring in this other theme that right now higher ed struggle, and it's this idea of freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, which we embrace as one of our strategic values at Georgia Tech. And I think that's powerful. And ironically, I think in that journey of finding one's voice, right, is when you think about belonging is about, do you feel welcome? Do you feel invited? Do you see? Do you feel seen? Do you feel proud? Right? Do you feel invited? Those are also some of the very concrete elements of a sense of belonging. And interestingly, I think the ability to express oneself freely, and maybe not everyone agree, but everyone give you the space to be able to share your perspective or their opinion or their view or tell your story is a very powerful gift. And to me, can be a pathway to belonging if we're able to use our voices, metaphorically speaking, as well as food. The challenge is that we're also a very diverse community. So there's many different views and many different perspectives. And I think managing that cacophony, if you will, that chaos that ensues when we all have the right, but then the expression and the exercise of that right inevitably creates conflicts. And also products and pain and trauma. And I think that's difficult. We had students who felt that some of the things that they see and hear that are protected in the name of free speech are racist or sexist or homophobic or anti-Semitic. or in some other way hateful or exclusionary. We have students who struggle and say, if you want me to have a sense of belonging, then you wouldn't allow certain kinds of speech on campus. This is impacting my psychological safety and my sense of mental well-being. And so something that was a major world event that we're grappling with, right, as a global community, and then here in the US, particularly our college students, are really trying to express their views on where they are. And it doesn't matter where you stand. I think students who identify as Jewish or pro-Israel, or students who are along that continuum of pro-Palestine. For us, I think it's students who identify as Arab, so Palestinians, a diaspora. But wherever you are in that, there's so many things to really dive deep, and they're complex. There's no simple answer. But I felt like that was a real challenge this year. Is, again, we talked about both and how we support health and wellness and still support academic excellence and achievement. How do we embrace a sense of community and belonging at a time we're also trying to uphold other values that I think people are saying, this is impacting and indicative of. So that's been really challenging. And I think as a professional, as an educator, as a person who cares about our students and wants them all to feel heard, and I call it the metaphorical hub, right? I want them to have that sense that they're embraced. So that was challenging this year. And I'll be honest, we're bracing that I think this next year will be tough too.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm reminded of being a leader is, it's really hard. Being a leader is really, really hard. I often think that I'm looking away because I'm reflecting on a couple of things. I'm thinking deep in my head, right? Is that sometimes people think, oh, it would be really cool to have this job or this job. But and I admire certain leaders so much. And so I'll tell you this story, and I don't remember the event this individual was talking about, but when you were just talking about this, I remember at one of our GTAB board meetings. So GTAB is the Georgia Tech Advisory Board. It is the advisory board to the president of Georgia Tech, so Angel Cabrera. And he commented about one of these events. I don't remember what event it is. And he said, this is a challenge because people are going to be upset because we are going to allow this event. And it is going to hurt them because it conflicts with their sense of self or their sense of these types of things. Right. And yet in other people, it supports their sense of self. It supports their sense of things, right? And the struggle is where is being inclusive in one way, not being inclusive in another way? Where is being supportive in one scenario, not being supportive in the other? Like, where is that? And I remember when he talked about this, and I'm confident. I have so much respect for the man. I will tell you this. One of the things I told him at the last board meeting is when I took my current job right now as COO of Atos Imaging, I was in California. I'd taken the job, and I get this text message one morning from his personal cell phone. And he said, "Congratulations. Everyone at Georgia Tech is so excited for you." So when I came to the board meeting at coffee time, I pulled him aside and I said, "Angel, I want to tell you, that meant so much to me because that personal message from you, like, you're a super busy person." And he said, "Thank you for telling me that meant much," because sometimes we do things and we don't realize how much it means to the person, right? And so that thing from him meant so much. And then watching him and him sharing vulnerably that he knows these decisions to have these events are risky, right? And they're vulnerable moments for him. I just see him as one of my own personal mentors in that way, because I believe it is vulnerable, strong leadership from a very confident, mentally strong individual that is to be admired. And it is strong. And I also feel for the individuals such as yourself who have to stand in the wake and figure out how to, have those tough conversations with individuals. So I do not envy you, but I know that is a challenge. And there are no easy conversations.
No, but there are also opportunities, because what I realize is to go back to what we were talking about earlier is how do we help this next generation of individuals who are going to lead our countries, our globe, our corporations, right, our organizations. And so I think the irony is this type of experience is a chance to build those schools. And you talked about EQ and IQ, right? So I think one of the things we have to help people see is the things that I think about is how do we not give power, right? And when I say that, what I mean is just because there's an event over here where people are saying X, but you believe Y, you don't have to give your personal power away and let that define who you are or what you feel. And that's a really powerful thing. And we live in a world with social media, right? And there's so much sort of intergroup or group related tribal thinking that we let the group sort of shape and guide how we feel inside, but that's giving power away, right? So how do we exercise that sense of self-agency where we go, you can say that, like let's say we disagree. So, and you can feel that, you can think that, you can believe that, and I don't, we can still be friends. And it doesn't mean that somehow I'm different because of what you say. So I think that's one, that self-agency. The second thing is I think increasingly we have to really push back in situations where people confuse their feelings with facts.
Yes. Yes.
Way, so therefore X must be true. And I can't, like, how many times I have to go, so let's unpack that. See, I get that you feel that way, but what are what evidence are you seeing? And this is related to the third thing that I think is part of emotional intelligence is, and I always remember this, I used to do when I did stress management workshops, one of the most important tools in stress management is cognitive reframing, right? And it's based on this idea that the way you feel is based on how you choose to be. And everyone's always like, no, that's not true. That's not true, right? So, but you can change how you think about something and it will change how you feel, right? And so you're driving on the road, someone cuts you off. You can go, oh my gosh, they did it on purpose. What a jerk. Blah, blah, blah. And
it's my favorite example. I love this.
Right. And so you're thinking they did this on purpose. So now you're mad. Or you can go, you know what? There's a lot of traffic. It's a stressful day. Who knows? I get it. They
probably have to make it to the hospital because they have their pregnant wife in the back seat. Right.
But one cognition results in anger and stress and the other cognition, like you're in a space of grace, right? Let me extend, I forgive. And so those three are all related, right? How do I maintain a sense of self-agency? Don't give power away. Don't let others define my reality. How do I make sure that I separate feelings back? And then last, how do I do self-talk to basically then manage my levels of stress or negative emotions? So those are opportunities. And this is one of the things that I love about my job is sometimes that's really different with a group of scientists.
It is. But you know what? Yes. And I strongly believe, being an engineer myself, I strongly believe it just takes different metaphors for them. Exactly. Right. And I believe, for example, some things that I say to my team are always assuming positive intent. So when I use that car example, I use it a lot, right? I'm like, okay, when someone cuts you off, they're a jerk. But when you cut someone off, you're in a hurry because you're late for a meeting. Okay. So it's the exact same scenario. It's just always okay for you to do it, but not for them to do it. Those types of scenarios. One thing I was thinking just now, Luoluo, when you were talking about this, is I was thinking about, I'm a big fan of DBT skills, so dialectical behavioral therapy skills. And if I could rewrite education in elementary and middle school or even high school, I don't know, there are a few classes I would remove. And I would add like stress management. I would add dialectical behavioral therapy skills. Some of those skills that, and also financial management skills. I would add some of those things that would help our generation be able to navigate these waters. Because much of the things that you are saying are, for example, how do you maintain a conversation with someone who believes something very differently from you, right? Like, how do you say, okay, one of my favorite phrases with someone that has an opinion that's different from me is just say, okay, tell me more. Like, I don't need to conflict. Just tell me more. Like, I'm going to listen. I don't need to give you any more details about my thoughts. Just tell me more. So one question I have for you in this is I love the whole freshman new experience thing. I don't remember what you called it, but anyway, I love that.
Yes.
So do you have mapped out within your plan a path towards where juniors and seniors are then leading these courses, or they have something where, because here I am, so I'm super selfish. I want to be very clear. I'm lazy and super selfish. And I have this vision of where I want these future leaders. So I want these people to come out building. I have this mantra for my personal website where I'm really trying to build towards doing more keynote speaking and more leadership and workshops on leadership. And I have this idea where I want to build more leaders who are capable of building leaders. Okay. And so I would love for more Georgia Tech students to come out learning how to teach more of these type of skills. So I'm just thinking this is a natural progression.
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of we are already using our students. So some of those listening in may be 1,000.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Yeah,
it's not required, but it is a pretty popular course. And so what's really neat is that you have a faculty member paired with a student, right? And they're co-instructing together. So I feel like that is starting to leverage the idea of having our own Georgia Tech students. So I think we have had that discussion about how do we involve peer leadership in this initiative. And again, we've got to have a cohort that goes through the training. Right? We have to have a cohort that goes through experience and then can reflect on that and use it. And then our hope is that years 1, year 2, like I said, it's going to be organic and iterate, right? We're going to be learners in this, right? We don't have all the answers. We have this idea. We're going to try it out. And we're going to do it the Georgia Tech way, which is we're going to tweak it. We're going to innovate. We're going to fail. We're going to be entrepreneurial, right? We're going to figure out how do we make it better and take the data and information from year 1 and apply it to year 2 and then going on. So I do see that at some point we build this and students are going to come fast, right? They're going to say, it's going
to happen. I'm going to call it out right now, Luoluo. August 9th of 2024, although I'm going to say it was my idea just because I just want to say it. Anyway, it's going to happen. And it's going to excite me so much because you are doing a phenomenal job leading so much progress. I do want to say for any listeners, I will give this caveat. So many of these programs, so many of these students that actually work towards these programs, scholarships and financial aid towards these programs is incredibly needed, incredibly helpful. So if you're listening to this and you're passionate about making an impact, then please make sure I will include Luoluo's information in the show notes. I will also ask her, towards the in just a second to provide her information. But I can tell you as a former student who went into a lot of debt at Tech, and I was also working to make a huge difference and an impact at Tech, that for when students do this sort of thing and they decide to partner on a project like this, instead of doing a paid internship or a paid work study or something like that, then it's really hard for them. So I would love if an organization or someone is listening to this and they say, hey, I would like to make a grant towards a student being able to help in something like this because it will absolutely help their professional career in a lot of different ways, then, please get a hold of Luoluo and I'm sure she can figure out a way to make that happen. So a couple of things, Luoluo. 1, you're going to provide your contact information. 2, You're going to tell us anything you really hope to cover that we either haven't covered or that we have covered that you really want to make sure that listeners remember. And then, of course, the third one is you have to share your favorite motivational quote. That's a requirement. So,
okay. All right. So first one, very easy to remember. Well, I guess if you know my title, so the best way to reach me is our email address. So it's VP _ SEWB. So if you figured out that's Vice President for Student English Wellbeing. So VP _ SEWB at godtech.edu. We read every email, respond to every email. So definitely looking forward to hearing feedback from the universe of real listeners. And I think in terms of this has been fun, by the way. Thanks. This is a great way to spend a Friday evening after a long week. So I feel so much more relaxed now. I think when I think about what we didn't cover in these, when we think about health, we oftentimes think, oh, I can't make a difference. I'm not a doctor. Or I can't help people's mental health. I'm not a psychologist, right? And I want to say that when it comes to care and clinical services, right, let's emphasize, we do want a credentialed, appropriately trained professional. Like, we should limit who does surgery, right? We should limit who does psychiatry. So I want to emphasize that, yes, when it comes to clinical care, intervention, healthcare services, it's important. But when it comes to how do we create a world that better supports people's health and wellness well-being every single day, I want everyone who's listening to know we all have a place, right? We all have, even just like you said, the small things that we do. You cannot underestimate. And I feel like over the years, I don't know how others feel, but I feel like over the years, the small things are happening less and less often. So that when small things happen, I feel like they're so powerful. But, when we talk about belonging, just simple things like, I'm really cognizant when I walk around campus, I make an effort to make eye contact and say, good morning, good afternoon, hi, and just simple things like that. And sometimes I see people go, wait, what? Like, you saw me? Like, it was just weird. But I don't want us to underestimate how much it makes a difference. You see a student making who's crying, right, on a couch in the student center in a corner, and you walk by. And most of us might go, I don't want to get up and move this. That'll violate your space. But just going up, and I've literally had students who are like, what are you doing? And just said, I couldn't help but notice you were fine. Are you okay? Can I get some help? And just that open, and how often that just leads to this waterfall of conversation and getting them, to a place where either they're talking through what their challenge is, they get through that crisis. But I just want to say to everyone who's listening, we all have the power to do that. Those little gifts, those little graces every day. You don't have to have an MD or a PhD. You just have to be someone who wants to start collective humanity and show up as a human being. And I think if we did that every single day, all the times that we go, we'd start cultivating help and wants.
Love that so much. I have this philosophy that if I basically get at least 7 feet from someone, I am going to smile and say hello. And
that. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm training my employees.
My favorite thing.
Yes. And I said, I've like recently been training my employees and my scanners and stuff at the company. And my biggest thing is, trust me, a smile will get you out of almost anything.
It really does, right?
It is just like the best form of currency.
I agree. It's that kindness, small acts of kindness. Again, I feel like they become increasingly rare and therefore more impactful relative.
Yes.
So anyway, I think we all share the power. We all share the responsibility. And I think that in and of itself is very, I think.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. And your favorite motivational quote is? I cannot wait.
Do I have to pick just one? Just one?
I know, it's so hard. I have like so many that picking just one is super hard for me too. I totally get it.
And just so you know,
you can give more than one if you want.
I motivational quotes, and I have like a list of them. Okay,
yes.
Like which when you're like, and we're gonna end with the quote. All right, let me sneak into. I'm gonna do one that I think is maybe more about like how I'm trying to live as a person and as a professional, just about my own journey on both fronts. And so this is from Maya Angelou. And so this one is one of my favorites. One isn't necessarily born with courage, but one is born with potential. Without courage, we cannot practice any other virtue consistency. We can't be kind, true, merciful, generous, or honest. In reading that, right? But
right? I love that. Can I tell you the story behind my Be Brave, Be Badass, which I'm working to trademark. I hope I get the trademark for it.
All right. I want the t-shirt.
Okay. I started this hashtag about 12 years ago, and it ties to what Maya said in that. And it is because I believe every one of us has our own personal badass. And what does that mean is it is our own personal best. Yours, Luoluo, is different from mine, is different from anyone else's. And actually, whatever my badass is today is different from tomorrow. It is, right? And I believe that each of us has to be brave enough to reach our own personal badass. And what I want to do with my life is to encourage each one of us to be brave, be badass.
No, I love that. Oh, I love that. So, all right, my other quote. Okay, so this one, not attributed to anyone, but it often appears every now and then. I find a mug or like a poster in Kohl's or Home. Again, some of your listeners heard this. So, dance like no one's watching, love like you've never been heard, sing like no one's listening, and live like heaven is on earth.
I love it. I love it. Luoluo, this has been amazing. It's definitely, this has not just been a couple months wait. It has actually been a couple of years wait for me.
Okay.
So I am very grateful. And I also know that I'm going to get to watch the transformation of the progress of the work that you're going to do firsthand, which I am super stoked about. I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to sweet talk some other people in the future to talk about updates about the progress. So I'm also stoked about that. I'm just going to speak it into existence because I'm pretty sure it'll happen. Okay, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks. It was great fun to spend this time with you. And just thanks for your ongoing commitment to Georgia Tech. Like I said, the alumni really helped keep us going. So key part of our efforts. So thank you.
Absolutely. Go Jackets, of course, right?
Of course.
Thank you for joining us today with your coffee and conversation. We hope you've been encouraged and learned something from today's story. To learn more about today's guest, please check out our show notes for more details. Now it's time to remember to like this episode, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. Recovery Advocate Network envisions a world where individuals with mental health challenges receive comprehensive and effective treatment without the worry of financial burdens to themselves or their families, all without the stigmas often present in society. We are proud that every individual worked with RAN does so on a 100% volunteer basis. You can support the mission by making a financial donation via PayPal or Venmo, or email donate@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org if you would like to donate items for our next fundraising auction. Please visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org to learn more. Now, stay in the loop about upcoming events, future episodes, and more by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and all major podcast platforms. As a reminder, the experiences and advice expressed in this episode are the host and guest's own personal stories and do not represent the opinions of any organization mentioned. RAN is passionate about opening the doors for all voices and experiences, not just those expressed in any particular podcast. If you want to share your experiences or expertise, we encourage you to be a future guest by emailing us at podcast@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org or submit a blog by emailing blog@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org. We also encourage you to comment on the episode so that we can continue to provide content that is most beneficial to the community. How do you do that? Visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org, and in the top right corner, click that comment button and comment. So listeners, what do you need to do? Pause what you're doing, subscribe, follow us. Please give us a like and a 5-star rating, write some meaningful comments, and most importantly, share these episodes with your friends. You never know whose heart you will touch, so please be a part of a reason someone has new hope today. If this episode was triggering to you, we encourage you to contact your support system, therapist, national and community support groups, the Global Crisis Text Line by texting 741-741, and/or if in the U.S., dialing 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're in the U.S. and need additional resources such as shelter, support group resources, transportation, food, and/or a safe, confidential path out of physical or emotional domestic abuse, please call 211 or visit www.211info.org for assistance. Now, we know you are very busy, and we are grateful that you said yes to sharing time with us today. If you stuck to our 3 C's of engagement and listened to the full episode, then visit the podcast section of our website and leave the comment about the podcast, and you'll be entered to win an autographed copy of one of the books from one of our book club series, as well as a Coffee and Conversation coffee mug. So thanks again. Until next time, back to your coffee.